I'm really happy that I can be here. Yeah, but before or then because the one without will be quite interesting. So we have a plan when we are visiting Poland. We can debate, and also we can. Or put it here in the middle. This one is supposed to be near me, right?
Yeah.
Next, become in the village, so villagers can listen. But we can listen about yeah. It's true. We're more organized now, and online and in person. It's also really possible. Have that screen that everybody would hear. So it'd be like a teleconference. It would be amazing, but it's also difficult to do.
Send it like
Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right, time for the time for case building is over. It's over. It's over. Sorry. Uh, Now, welcome to the Eco Idea debate session match one. We have Team Hamzanwadi B as the government team. We have Team Sman and Mataram as the opposition. To open the case, let's invite the Prime Minister and place are yours.
Well, I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm as the first speakers of a government team, and today our motion is this House regret the prioritizations of world over food. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as we know that in past or many years ago, in past people also use biomass fuel, where for example when they are cooking food, of course they need the fuel, and they use the wood to become the fuel, and of course when the people use the wood to become the fuel for the cooking, so it means that they will cutting down the trees, right? So it will destroy the environment of our world. So, but time by time, nowadays, people use or move from the biomass fuel to fossil fuel. As we know that fossil fuel is the non-renewable resource, and it is estimated that the fossil fuel is starting to decrease time by time. So and also as we know that the needs of the fuel of the people right now is is increasing. So many countries or the government try to look for another alternative to change the fossil fuel, and right now many development countries use the fossil use the biomass fuel to change the fossil fuel So but it is, however, this is to expense of reducing food productions, and we know that we don't want to prioritize this biomass fuel over the food. Well, our goal here is we don't want to prioritize the biomass fuel over the food. Why? Because we know that food is our primary needs, and we know that without food we can live, right? But in other side, if we only prioritize the fuel over the food, so it means that we will not put attention to the food, and it will make the food become ignored. And also, as we know that biomass is a term to refer to all organized organic compounds derived from agricultural plants, organic waste, and others. Biomass can also be categorized into agricultural waste, forestry waste, organic waste, and so on. Biomass is the renewable energy resource with low quality. Thermal energy transformation technology that uses biomass is very complicated and must be adapted to its utilization, whereas depending on its use, and it's relatively complicated. Why I said like that? It is really complicated when use biomass become to make a biomass fuel. Well, because we know that the process needs long long time to process the biomass itself. Okay, but our point here is we cannot prevent to for the country or for the government to develop or to make the biomass become the full, or but we don't want to prioritize this biomass over the food. Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to my argument. First, as we know that in economic point of view, for example, in Germany, the electricity of biomass is let's see, the electricity of biomass is subsidized by the government. So it's mean that the farmer in the there is two farmer. There are two farmer. The first is the farmer who plants the food for the biomass, and there is another farmer plant the food for the needs or the foods to consume. So in here, the farmer of who plants the biomass is most get higher benefit, where the price of the biomass itself is higher than the food itself. So it will many people how to say worry about this when most of the farmer of the plants for the food move to plants the food for the biomass itself. So it will decrease the food or the supply of the food itself. And also when we apply, we really disagree with if we prioritize this food over the food. Why? Because we know that if the food is prioritized, it will make the food price the price of the food is getting higher. So it will make us many people is really difficult to get the food itself. And we know that in nowadays we face many problems. For example, like a COVID, many people it's really difficult to get the money, and also there is Russian invasion to Ukraine. It make the wheat how to say cannot. Yes, we cannot get the wheat from the Ukraine itself because the Russian stopped the wheat itself. So I think we need to focus on solving the hunger problems in our world. Thank you so much.
We thank the Prime Minister for that speech. Now to open the case of the opposition, let's invite the leader of opposition.
I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. This House will grant the prioritization of fuel over food. In the race of alternative energy, the developed country has transitioned to biomass as the alternative to fossil. However, this is at the expense of reducing food production. Firstly, I would like to rebuttal some of the points given by the proposition. They said that prioritizing fuel over food doesn't mean this. They said that prioritizing fuel over food will make the food will decrease the amount of food, but actually prioritizing fuel over food doesn't mean that the food will be extinct. As said in the info slide, it would only reduce the food production. They said that biomass is complicated and it's ineffective. The opposite, we believe that biomass is very easy to do because on the context of developed country, they have the resource to do that. And we believe that it is very effective to fight climate change. Also, the proposition said that they still want to use biomass, but they don't want to prioritize it over food. But we believe that this is impossible to do because the characteristic of biomass is that they need plants, they need food, and to do that, they have one way or another, they have to reduce the food production. So actually, this point given by the proposition is very clashing to the spirit of the debate. Now moving on, and also more of the rebuttal will be integrated into my points. Now moving on, let's talk about what biomass is. Biomass is a fuel mostly derived from plants, wood, and also waste. That means as long as plants are going to be on this planet, biomass will be available as renewable energy source. Biomass helps reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emission that give more impact to global warming and climate change. Therefore, we can conclude that biomass emission level is far smaller compared to fossil fuel and helps with our environment. In the current status quo, on the context of developed country, fossil fuels have been slowly being put aside and slowly but surely biomass fuel being added as one of the main fuel used by the developed country. The condition of our environment right now is very concerning. For example, climate change, heat waves, storm, rising sea level, etc. A way to combat this is by implementing biomass because biomass is an effort by the government to help our environment. And as I said before, biomass fuel requires plant, food, and also waste. And it creates the thought that it prioritized fuel over food and regretting it. But we, as the opposition team, did not regret the prioritization of fuel over food. What we mean by prioritizing fuel over food is that we are not going to use the whole land just for biomass fuel because biomass fuel requires plants, right? So one way or another, it requires land. But we're not going to use the whole land just for biomass fuel. There will be also a set of land just to produce food for human, cattle, livestock, and etc. Moving on to my first point. Why is justified to not regret fuel over food? Once again, on the context of developed country, you can see that the expense of reducing food production is not that concerning because food or hunger on developed country is not the main concern. Rather, on developed country, food is often being dispersed. For example, in Korea, you could see many food waste and a surplus amount of food to the point where you would be fine if you would waste some food because of the amount of food waste there. So actually, the main concern is none other than the environment and renewable energy. So if we actually implement biomass and the food production gets reduced, it's not going to be reduced to the point that it's going to be harmful to the society and it will actually help the environment. But why is it the only way to do that? As we know, our environment is deteriorating. The temperature is going high to the point in Poland. Many institutions have to be temporarily closed because the heat wave caused by climate change. If we keep on prioritizing food by using fuel or energy that doesn't reduce our food production, like fossil, for example, our environment will keep on worsening and affect the weather to the point crops can't grow sustainably anymore. For example, because of the heat wave and rising sea level. So we need to sacrifice some of our food production to implement biomass food because if you don't, you won't even have food anymore. So it's like you choose more food, but then the food ultimately goes out because of the environment cannot support crops and plants to grow. Or you can choose to sacrifice some of your food production to sustainably grow more food for the next decade or so and help our environment. Also, this would be perceived in a good way by the society because right now, society are more aware of climate change and environment more than ever. They want to fight climate change. And if the government implement this as an effort to fight climate change, it will be perceived in a good way by the society. It's proof that prioritizing fuel of especially biomass of wood on the context of developed country only reduce a little bit of the food production to the point that it won't even be harmful to the society. And also, it will help the environment. It is the only way to do so. It is better on the long term, and more importantly, it is justified to not regret the prioritizing fuel over food. Moving on to my urgency point. The urgency to prioritize fuel, especially biomass over food, and why it is not regrettable. To change something, we need cost and sacrifice, and that cost is very, very reasonable, which is reduction of food reduction, considering our current environmental health and urgency in our world. We can already see many effects of climate change. For example, in Germany in 2018, They experienced the hottest year in its history with damages of more than thousands million dollars for the agricultural sector, making crops grow very unlikely. If you keep this on, maybe not only Germany, but many countries will also experience it. Therefore, it is very urgent to prioritize fuel, especially biomass over food, and not regretting it. Then that's it for me. The first speaker for me proposition. Thank you.
We welcome the second speaker from the government side of the house. Time is yours.
I start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, an adjudicator reminded from my argument, the first one and to rebuttal some statement from the outside team. The first one is they said like the society or people want to fight climate change because it is the urgency problem in our status quo now. But if we think that if we compare with food, it's very contrast because climate change will make food is available of food. It's not availability. And then they said about it cost also. If we think biomass, it need so more cost to process the biomass, right? So when we need the most cost to process the biomass, of course, when the government prioritizes for the biomass, so the funding actually, for example, to make the fund for the food, for example, but they will deliver to the biomass because the government prioritizes to process the biomass because of the biomass have need more funding or financing to process it. So this is will make our status quo or yes, our sustainability of human life is not balancing in our status quo now. Okay, back to my argument. Actually, ladies and gentlemen, our motion today is this house regret the privatization or go over food. Okay, we must be aware that food is more important. It's one of important things or elements in our life, in human life. Without food, we cannot live, right? We can delay the biomass, but we cannot delay the food, right? Is it right? Because why? Because not every day, not every time or hour we need biomass, but food we need every day. Even we need food 3 times in a day, right? So we cannot prioritize that the biomass is most precious than the other food. And then here we can see in our status quo now that so many society or people just live in land or property or they so many of them like starving because of there's no the food availability in our country. Why I say like that? Because we can see from what the government do in our country. Government still like doing import, right? It's determined that when the government doing import, this means that our country, this especially in India, especially in import, when the government when the government doing import, so it means that our country is very like in the food. So that's why we must focus to bring us another sector or another field better than food. We must focus as government must focus on this problem in our country. So many societies, so many people they cannot like sufficient of food because and then our country must import and we can see all of field, not all but most of them, most of the field in our rice field in our country just change with the hotel or with the building or something like that. It means that we must we must face that the food crisis in our country first, then to bring us another field. So our purpose in as the government team, we do not want to protest the world because of we must focus to the food first, and we want to balance development. Because why? Because if the world can balance and food can balance, so the government not taking harm for them. Because why? Because when the food always time, and the will also will availability. So it will be more better in our status quo. And then the second argument is that our mechanism to solve this problem. We cannot not want to bypass the rule because we can see the half of rule, the half of biomass is very thin, like CO2 because why? Because when they want to process the biomass, it will the result of the biomass also can make the CO2 CO2. And then the solution is we can break from C, right? So we can solve that problem. But if we just focus or prioritize the biomass, so it will make the country or the government is not focused to another. And we think that the food is it's more better to focus on. And then here, the second mechanism is we want to make the balance with the limitation of the biomass usage in our society. For example, in LPG, we want to, for example, in one house, there is just one LPG or the electric, for example, not more than 120 kWh or something like that. So we want to limitation from that to make the biomass sustainability in our status quo. And then here we can see also in our country there's two groups, right? I mean two groups of our people, of our society. We can call with the tribal or someone who not influenced with the technology or biomass. For example, they just live in the forest, or for example in our island like Sado or there's some place it's not accepted with the biomass or with the technology, so they don't need the biomass, but they need food because food is the more important element in our life. So that's why we don't need to protest the rule over food because everyone don't need food every time, but everyone don't need the biomass every time, but they need food, not rule. So we are from the government here. We do not want to protest the biomass over food, but we want to balance in our status quo now. Thank you.
To continue the case, the oppositions and fighting the peace with our opposition. Here.
Test. I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I believe that the government team is going out of the perimeter. Remember, the perimeter of our debate right now is developed country. And if you're talking about developing country, developed countries would ultimately benefit from the developed country because of this biomass energy. And also what I can get from the government team is that they're very protective of food, but completely neglecting our environment. So all of their cases is about food, world hunger. And also they said that food and environment is not comparable. When without our environment, how can you get the food in the first place? And also that they completely ignore the fact that we need immediate action for our environment, but they do not give any single solutions. They keep on saying that biomass is bad, biomass is creating this and that, and also they keep on saying that we need food, we need to focus on food, when actually world hunger will happen in their side of the house too. But at least in our side of the house, it's not going to be that fatal because again, the context is the developed country that the main concern is not food. it's not hunger because they're clearly developed. Because if they're not developed, then of course you will have that problem. But at least in our side of the house, we will also solve environment problems without like completely neglecting our people. This is the main idea of the government team. They're completely in denial of how good and how the possibilities of biomass for our environment right now. And because of these reasons, also they can see they keep on like remember that this debate is not whether or not this is debate does not talk about whether or not biomass is good or not. It's about whether or not you regret it that you prioritize fuel over food. But I can clearly see that you're being way too one-sided to the point that you're completely in denial of the biomass benefit. And also, this is the question for the government team. If they do not answer this, then it means that they completely failed this debate. Which is so for the government, how does you improve for your environment then? If you completely hate the idea of prioritizing food over fuel, prioritizing on fuel over food. Okay, this is my main questions for today. Okay, moving on to my arguments, which is first, how fuel over food will save more life. I feel like I don't need to repeat the condition of our world right now, right? We're all very well aware of this matter. We are all scared of what's going to happen to us in a few years. Can we survive this? Is there still a chances for us? The answer is yes. Although there is going to be some sacrifices that we need to do. But a lot of people are more concerned on the sacrifice that they're going to give now, rather than the sacrifice that they're going to give later after it becomes too late for them to create any changes whatsoever. Realize that every method has pros and cons, so it is a matter of urgency right now of choosing the best options for our environment, which is, in this case, is biomass energy. So why do we conclude that prioritizing fuel over food will save more life? Okay, moving on to our current status quo, which is a lot of countries still use the fossil fuel, right? So as we know, fossil fuel is not sustainable in any shape or form. As the government already mentioned, it will inevitably run out one day. And when it does, we collapse. What happens when we collapse? It will create bigger impact rather than you're scared of having like limited of food, rather than you're going to face no electricity, no transportation, no communication, and even zero food production. This is whether or not, this is what I mean by talking about urgency right now. We understand that food is very, very important, but right now, we need in our environment for our food. Without our environment, we cannot produce food, and we actually gonna completely kill our whole planet because of this. And also, we know that fossil fuel creates greenhouse gases, which is the one who creates carbon emissions, not biomass, because biomass is carbon neutral. Thank you so much. And also, they said that, and because of this, it's okay to sacrifice now, better than later when it is too late. Our world is still not in the worst state right now. We can still plant some corn, okay? We can still plant some things. We have a lot of trees. We have a lot of things. Why don't we use this right moment? Or why don't we use all the natural resources that we have right now for this changes? For this fuel, because when let's use these chances to do the method to reduce the amount of carbon emissions. And also because of this, it might cut some food for some time, but it will not be forever. And also that because of this method, we will have more time to develop this technique to become better and better. What we are literally in a constant race with time right now. It's a matter of time until the environment eat us or us helping the environment. For this exact reasons, we are buying ourselves sometimes with this method because now there will be less carbon emission. It means that our growth will be a little, yeah.
Okay, you said that you want to reducing the carbon emission, but we know that not only from cutting the biomass, but we can also use the sea. C is the function of schools to reduce the carbon emissions. So how?
Well, as you can see, it's not enough. That's the reason. It's not enough because you can compare the amount of fossil fuel that we use than the sea. It is way larger than you can think it is. If our sea can actually help our carbon emission that much, why is there still a problem then? Right? We have a lot of sea, but the main problem is because the carbon emission is way too high. We use it way too much. That's the thing. That's why we need to change our way to fuel with this biomass. Okay, I know that every great action have great sacrifice. It comes down to which one is more worth it, the reducement worth it. Okay, the reducement of food or the collapse or the inchangeable disastrous state of our world. Like, by sacrificing now, we are saving ourselves and all of the people around the world by the reductions of carbon emissions. Thus, we are gonna save more lives than the government team that prioritize food. Thank you so much.
Thanks for that speech. Now, let's invite the third speaker from the government side to turn on the case.
Now I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the honorable educator and all of the audiences. Well, before I'm going to deliver my argument, let me rebate some argument or statement from the opposite team. The first is they say the motion is this house will grant a prioritization of full overfood. Okay, sorry. And then they say that if you prioritize it, of course, it means that you must focus on it. And then if you focus on it, how about another problem that we got in our country and another country also in this world? And then they say that eco-friendly, and then with using the biomass, they will decrease the global warming. But the fact is, when we produce or making the biomass, also we still contribute the carbon dioxide because of the combustion process, right? And then you said that more aware, but why this is still happen? But if we still aware, but if we aware about that, and then you say that talking about the cost for making biomass is more bigger than the output that the biomass itself. It means that it's not worth it to prioritize the biomass itself, right? No thanks. And then talking about development country, from the Western team talking about the development country, but remember, if the development country is only one material in the country, how they force themselves to making a biomass itself. So they will import from another country, right, to make a biomass. It means that make a more cost for them. So that's why we believe that by not prioritize the biomass, it will make the good impact also for the economy side. And then now to the second speaker of the opposition, talking about the biomass, it's a good and then will disperse and friendly to the ecosystem. How about is it not stable? Because we know that the material they need to make a biomass depends on the climate, right? So it means that maybe like a corn they will plant, then we are waiting for summer time, so that's why we can plant the corn, right? It means that this will not stable for the future also. And then let's move to my argument. As the first speaker, that the biomass is organic, that you use the alternative for the fossil, but in the end, that will be make the reduction in food production because the status quo is now the status quo is now the land of agriculture is decreased, so that's why the oxygen also decreased. So that's why we need more agricultural land to plant all of the food material to produce the food also. And then like a biomass or support system in our life, such as transportation also, but not with food. Human life on by food, not by biomass. But if you talking about like how about we make it like electric with the biomass thing, we have sun, we have like water, we have like air to make electric. Not biomass is not only the one way to get the electric, right? And then now the things issue solved is the problem that happen now. Priorities like starving and hurrying like war and so on. That must be fixed. Now we focus on what happen in our country and other. And in the development of biomass, it will still have we don't regret about the existence or the biomass itself, but what we regret is we will prioritize the biomass stuff over the food. But let me ask you guys that why we should prioritize the biomass? Is there any human here like breakfast with biomass? Is there any human here drinking biomass as like a coffee? Of course, no. So that's why we need food, right? So it's if there is no if the reduction of food is decreased, it means that there is like a starving or like we may if we don't if we prioritize the biomass, it means that we make a new problem like starving, like bad nutrition, and how about the human diet? The technology and the biomass is not, the biomass and the technology is useless if there is no human in it, right? So, and then our mechanism from the government team is what my second speaker said, that the limitation for limitation for the fuel or the biomass itself. So it means that we can save the energy for the long for the future also, because of we don't need to prioritize the biomass, but we need to make balance between the food and the biomass itself, because of and then focus to fixing all of the problem in our life. And then we know that the biomass is secondary things or secondary things. So what it means that we don't need to prioritize, right? Because of like a food is the basically things that we need in our life. So maybe that's all for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that speech. Now let's invite the third speaker of oppositions to continue the case of opposition here.
I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. As the opposition whip, I will separate my speech into 2, which are the rebuttals, then addressing the summary, then lastly to the summary. Okay, starting with my rebuttals from the government team. Okay, from the Prime Minister itself, the Prime Minister seems to misunderstand some of the context in the debate, because we're talking about biomass that is produced from food itself, but she's talking about biomass that is produced from wood at the status quo at first. But then she continues to make arguments based on biomass that is created from food, like from crops and from other type of food resources. But what we're confused right now is the government team really talking about biomass that is created from wood, which we cannot consume, or is biomass created from crops that we could consume? So we need a bit of more clarification from them, which we didn't really get. So starting with the first rebuttal, they mentioned that if we use biomass, then the food would be ignored, or food would be scarce, or food would be less But remember that the context that we are talking right now is developed countries. Developed countries have surplus of food production. We've seen many foods in developed countries, such as the United States or such as Poland, that have waste food that they don't use. Either they have excess crops that they move into, that they change into exporting, or they have excess crops that they turn into waste. So what we're talking is that we are going to use the excess, the surplus crops that they produce. We want to turn it into biomass. So if they say that the food will be scarce, there wouldn't be, because it is a developed country. Developed country already fulfilled a quota of crops of food to fulfill the needs of their citizens. But if we use it some of the surplus for biomass, then it wouldn't really necessarily harm the quota of the food. So there wouldn't be any scarcity of food itself in the developed country. And then second, it says that if we prioritize biomass fuel, then many farmers would turn into biomass, and then there won't be any farmers left to produce food. Remember that biomass doesn't necessarily mean you can turn any type of food into fuel. You need some certain type of crops to turn into fuel, and not every farmer is going to make that same crop. Like for example, we're going to use corn as a way of biomass fuel, but we're not going to use strawberries as fuel because you really can't make it from strawberries or mangoes. So next, moving to saying that the price of the food would be higher, and then they put into context that war in Russia and Ukraine, that they really need food, food, and then it's going to be expensive and they couldn't afford it. Remember that not every country right now is at war, because when we're talking is in developing countries, many countries right now don't have war with other countries. Of course, if you're currently at a war, you need to prioritize food, duh. But if you're talking about countries that is developed, like Germany, Germany, UK, the Netherlands, Belgium, France, many other countries, they are currently at no war with their neighbor countries. But what war are they in? They're in a war with the climate. So we need to focus more on the climate. Which in what way? Well, we would make a better renewable sustainable fuel, which is what? The biomass. So by the Prime Minister, I think I already answered all the rebuttals. So moving to the Deputy Prime Minister. She said that society wouldn't accept farm biomass because it would take people's food. So, and then we said that we need food every day and we don't need biomass every day. Remember, you need energy every day to make food. How are you going to cook your food? How are you going to put lights in your house? How are you going to go to your place? Okay, what is it?
Okay, you need work to cook, right? But how about the food, like the food we directly can.
Okay. How about fruits and how about, well, you eat rice, right? Everyone eat rice or everyone eat bread. What we need, we need heat, and where we get heat from energy. So we cannot rely on purely vegetables and fruits that we can eat directly. So yeah, we need. Okay, moving to many people are starving. Many people need food. That is the second argument given. But remember, in this context, it's developed country. Developed countries don't have people who are starving. Developed countries even have surplus of food. So in this context, it doesn't really count. So, and then moving to the government whip. Her first rebuttal is that if we prioritize full, then what about the other problems? There's no other problems because in this context, developing countries and there is no starvation. And moving to the other argument is that food is a priority and not biomass. Yeah, but we need fuel to cook food. So again, we also need a more renewable. So, and then moving to the summary. As a summary, the production of biomass by developing countries is the reason that it is a much more sustainable energy source of production rather than fossil fuel. The main reason why we would need it is because of climate change. Now, well, the reason of why we should regret fuel over food is because in the context of developing countries, right now, they already developed enough for them to put climate change as a main concern for them, since food scarcity is nowhere to be found in this developed country. Now, if your concern is food scarcity, then we need to remember that in the context of developed countries, they have an abundance of food supplies, a food surplus, that would probably end up being waste. So when we change some of those into biomass, the food would probably end up as waste, and end up as waste would be utilized as biomass, meaning there wouldn't be any food scarcity.
with more addition in energy in the form of biofuel. Remembering that these developed countries, most of them already committed into a promise that they will be carbon neutral by 2050. And if we still keep using fossil fuels such as coal, that wouldn't be really carbon neutral. It would cause much more damage into the environment. Now, this is what we already said before, is that using biomass fuel means that it will be carbon neutral. Since if you use biomass fuel that is from an already have many other type of plants such as forest, when you burn the carbon from the biomass fuel itself, it would be recycled again by the other plants that we have. So in reality, this biomass fuel would be carbon neutral, and we would reach the goal for most of developed countries to be carbon neutral by 2050. That's all from me. Thank you.
To conclude the case from the side of opposition, would like to invite the opposition reply.
I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Before going to my reply, I would like to thank all of the speakers on this debate for the amazing arguments. I would like to give applause. Okay, let's move on to what's happening in this debate. Today we're debating under the motion. This House regrets the prioritizations of fuels over food. Right? There's a government team that gives plans about how it will destroy the environment by tree logging, and also they talk about they don't want to prioritize fuels over food. Also, they said that we should prioritize other problem instead, and also they're so scared of food hungers. But realize that all of their points have been rebutted by the opposition teams, making all of their points invalid. And for this reason, in this debate, the government team also going out of the perimeter from the debate, which is the context is the development. They're also talking about the developing country characterizations, which is people who have hungers and stuff like that. And also they said that, and also they're way too one-sided. They keep on saying that we need food, but food over our environment. We need food over our fuel. Food is our primary needs, although it's true. But the fact that you need fuels to cook your food so it becomes consumable means that their points is invalid on that one. And also they're clashing with their own arguments. They say that they do not regret the existence, but also talk about how biomass is ineffective, and also said that biomass creates carbon dioxide, even though it's the way it works. You use the carbon dioxide as the energy. That's literally the meaning of biomass. So they not only that they do not understand the meaning of biomass, they also do not understand. They also clash with each other. Also, they said that they want balance, but at the same time keep saying food over environment without giving any solutions on what we should do then for our environment that needs immediate action. And from the opposition teams, we bring all the sides. We bring how it is really urgent right now. We acknowledge that food is important, but it is a matter of urgency, which one we should prioritize right now. And it's clearly fuels, because it's our environment, because our environment is deteriorating, as my first speaker had mentioned. And also the second speaker already mentioned about what will happen if we prioritize food over fuels, and how if we do not have fuels, or if we become way too dependent on this not renewable fuel, it it will become like our world can collapse and give more damages than the reducements of food. And also my third speaker have already rebutted every single argument of the government team, thus making us believe that we should want this debate. Thank you.
Close this case, let's invite the government reply.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm still at my speaker here. I want to mention what the oversight team set up in our motion today. They just focused on how to protect our environment, how to fight about the climate change and other, but they forget about who will be the actual subject of environment, and that is the human right, those the people. And we have to keep the sustainable of people life in this world. So that's why to keep the human life in this world, we need what the human or the people need in the life, and that is food. Okay. We want to recognize on one side, we don't want to recognize the biomass because we know that our environment now, is fine, right? Because why? Because every country, most of country like Africa, and something like that, like have the society live in line of poverty, right? So the big problem is about the food, it's about the sustainability to availability the food for the human life, sustainable life for the people, right? So that's why we don't need to focus on prioritize, but because the means of prioritize is we give the big attention more than the other sector, right? And that is the food. So when we prioritize the biomass over food, it means that the government will just focus on how to increasing the biomass and food. It's okay the government just keep the food, but we know that our climate change it's not sustainable, right? For example, there is just rain or by something like that. It's cannot guarantee that our stock of food in our country is can sufficient to all of them. So that's why the government don't need to protest one of that. Here is biomass, but the government need to focus on one of them. And then from the government side, we have also here. We want to confirm that food. When we say that food is very important, it's okay. We need the will to cook in the food, right? But how we can use that food if there is no food? How? You can have the will, but there's no food. So what you will cooking? So I think right. So things it's okay. There is not much and there is the food like not need to like the biomass like the food like the something like that. We can directly eat them, right? So and then not all people in our country in our world need I also said that because we can see from it's okay there is a minority, but there is the community can they live in the forest and they don't want to use the bureau, they don't want to use the technology because they believe that they can still live in the forest with the any of that, right? So it's proof that we can still live without zero, but we cannot live without food. So that's why from the government side of the house, we think that we not want to protest the will of the food because government is important. Thank you.
Right, thank you for the debate, everyone. We will wait a couple moments for the debaters to deliberate and deliver the verbal dedication. Thank you.